Okay, we are jumping straight in today with a really fantastic paper from FAIR at Meta and collaborators. It's called What Does It Take to Be a Good AI Research Agent? Studying the Role of Ideation Diversity.
Yeah, and this one really gets under the hood of these autonomous AI agents. It's not just about the final score, but about what the actual bottleneck is right now in these complex machine learning tasks.
And the single biggest takeaway, right at the top, for anyone building or researching in this space is this. The best agent isn't the one with the single best idea. It's the one that generates the widest variety of ideas at the very beginning.
Exactly. That initial diversity, what they call ideation diversity, it's basically a safety net.
A safety net. I like that. And they proved this at a massive scale, right?
Oh, yeah. We're talking 11,000 different agent runs on the MLE benchmark, and the data was just crystal clear. A really strong positive correlation between that ideation diversity and success, what they call the medal rate.
Then they went further. They didn't just show a correlation, they actually established causality. They took a group of agents and deliberately restricted their ability to come up with diverse ideas.
And performance just tanked. It fell by up to 8.4 absolute percentage points in their medal rate. It's a huge drop.
So the technical reason, the why behind this, is that diversity is really a de-risking strategy.
That's the punchline. It just mathematically increases the odds that the agent will try a solution it can actually pull off, letting it sidestep all those frustrating implementation bugs that still plague even the best LLMs.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. So for anyone who might be a bit new to this specific corner of AI, let's quickly define what we're even talking about. What is an AI research agent?
Right, so think of it as an end-to-end autonomous system. Its whole mission is to speed up science by automating the entire machine learning pipeline.
So it's not just code generation, it's everything.
Everything. From generating the initial idea to designing the experiment, running it, validating it, and then iterating on it. It's supposed to be like a human researcher in a box, but running at machine speed.
And it's important to understand these aren't just LLMs running wild. There's a structure. You can kind of break them down into two main parts. Right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You have the brain, which is the model backbone. That's your big LLM, like O3, a GPDOS model, or Llama Maverick. It does the thinking and generates the text.
And then you have the executive function.
Exactly. That's the agentic framework, or the scaffold. It's the outer loop that directs the LLM, manages the memory, decides which tools to use. It's the conductor of the orchestra, things like AIDE or AIRA.
And the orchestra plays in a very specific arena. For this paper, it was the MLE-bench.
Which is pretty much the gold standard for this kind of work. It's a set of 75 real-world Kaggle competition tasks. And crucially, they're all different computer vision NLP time series. So it's a real test of an agent's ability to generalize.
Okay, so the typical workflow for an agent on one of these tasks is a kind of tree search. It generates an idea, tries to implement it, executes it, debugs it, and improves it.
Right. But what's so smart about this paper is they decided to ignore almost all of that. They focused only on that very first step, idea generation.
Because their hypothesis was that this is the real bottleneck.
That's the idea. If you start off by exploring a really narrow set of ideas, it almost doesn't matter how good you are at debugging later on. You're already stuck in a local minimum.
Which brings us to the methodology, because you have to ask, how do you even measure diversity when you're just looking at a bunch of initial ideas spat out by an LLM?
They got pretty clever here. They looked at the first 5 solutions the agent drafts, and they didn't get bogged down in like tiny hyperparameter changes.
Yeah.
They focused on the high-level approach. Is it a CNN? Is it a transformer? A decision tree?
Ah, so they're grouping by the fundamental architecture. That makes sense. It gets at the core difference in the ideas.
Exactly. And to put a number on that, they turned to information theory, specifically Shannon entropy, base 2.
Okay, for those of us who haven't dusted off our information theory textbooks in a while, what does that actually tell us in this context?
It's basically a measure of surprise or unpredictability. So if your agent always suggests, say, 3 CNNs and 2 gradient boosting models, that's a very predictable low entropy distribution.
Very low diversity.
Right. But if it suggests 5 totally different things, a CNN, a transformer, a simple regression, a time series model, and an ensemble, that distribution is much flatter. The surprise is high, the entropy is high, and therefore the diversity is high.
Got it. And they measured that diversity score against the standard performance metric, the medal rate from Kaggle.
Yep, bronze, silver, or gold. And we have to just stress the scale here again. 11,000 runs, 6 different LLMs, 2 scaffolds, 75 tasks. This took 264,000 GPU hours. This isn't a small-scale observation.
And that's why the results are so powerful. The scatter plot in the paper is just undeniable, a correlation of R by 0.57.
Which, for anyone in ML, knows that on a dataset this messy and this large, an R value of 0.57 is a very, very strong signal. As diversity goes up, performance goes up, period.
And you could see the models clustering, couldn't you? The really high-performing models like O3 and GPS were all in that high-diversity, high-performance corner.
And the open-source LLMs like Llama Maverick and Devstrol, which performed worse, were all clustered down in the low-diversity, low-performance zone.
So this suggests two things. First, the bigger, more capable LLMs are just naturally more creative, let's say.
Sure. But second, and maybe more importantly, the scaffold, that outer loop, plays a huge role in either encouraging or suppressing that creativity.
Which is exactly what they tested next. They took the same powerful brain, the O3 model, and put it in 2 different scaffolds, AIDE and AIRA, to see how the framework itself changes things.
And the results were, well, stark. The AIDE scaffold, it sort of fell into this safe solution bias. It just kept suggesting the same things over and over.
How bad was it?
Its 2 main ideas, gradient boosting decision trees and CNNs, made up 70% of all its initial plans. 70%.
Wow. So no matter the problem, 7 times out of 10, it's suggesting one of 2 tools. If the problem needs a screwdriver, it's still just offering a hammer or a wrench.
You got it. And even more specifically, just 2 models, like GBM and EfficientNet, accounted for 43% of its first drafts. Now compare that to AIRA,
which was designed to be more exploratory.
That's more. Its top 4 architectures only added up to 68%. The distribution is way flatter. And to get to that 43% mark that AIDE hit with just 2 models, AIRA had to use 9 different models.
It's such a critical point for anyone designing these systems. You can have the best LLM in the world, but if your scaffold design is lazy, you're just forcing it into tunnel vision.
You're hamstringing it before it even starts. They also looked at a simpler metric, just the raw count of different architectures in the first 5 ideas.
The tree-level diversity.
Yeah, and it showed the same thing. The good models averaged about 3.5 distinct architectures, the weaker ones, about 2.8. Every metric points in the same direction. Breadth of ideas at the start is key.
Okay, but as any good researcher knows, correlation is not causation. This is where the study gets really cool, with the controlled experiment.
Right. They had to prove that diversity causes the good performance, not just that good agents happen to be diverse. So they decided to actively intervene.
Before we get to how they broke it, let's talk about how the control agents were set up to succeed. What were their built-in diversity mechanisms?
So the control agents, AIRA and ARAM-CTS, had 3 main things going for them. First was sibling memory. The agent knew what other parallel attempts were trying so it wouldn't repeat itself.
Okay.
Second was prompt adaptive complexity. The prompt actually guided the LLM to suggest a mix of simple, medium, and complex ideas for its first 5 shots.
So it prevents it from only suggesting, say, giant, complex model.
Exactly. And third, a simple, explicit mention in the system prompt that just said, hey, come up with diverse ideas. So to create the low diversity group, they basically reversed all that.
They took away the good stuff, the complexity prompt, and the explicit mention, and then they kind of weaponized the sibling memory.
They did. Instead of telling it to be different from its siblings, they prompted it to generate similar ideas based on what its siblings were doing. They essentially told the LLM to find a what and stay in it.
And it worked. The low-diversity agents used only 1 or 2 architectures and 70% of the tasks. They successfully choked off the creativity.
And the result was a huge performance drop. On the MLE-like benchmark, the AIRA agent score fell by 6.9 percentage points. The ARAM-CTS agent fell by 8.4 points.
It's just conclusive. Diversity isn't just a nice-to-have feature, it's a critical performance limiter.
You can literally turn the dial on diversity and watch the performance score go up or down. It's a causal link.
Now, a quick aside for the ML engineers listening. The paper does a good job of critiquing its own main metric, the medal rate. Why is that not always the best way to measure performance?
Yeah, the medal rate is a bit brittle. The cutoffs for bronze, silver, and gold can be super narrow, sometimes less than a 3% score difference. It's really noisy.
Yeah.
And the medals are based on Kaggle's private test set, while the agents are working with their own.
Right, so to make sure their findings were robust, they brought in 4 other metrics.
Yep. They added valid submission rate, which is just, did the agent even manage to submit anything that didn't crash? then average normalized score, percentile, and an ELO-based agent ranking.
Let's pause on the ELO ranking. Why is that so useful here?
ELO is great because it doesn't care about human scores or how the points are distributed. It's just a head-to-head comparison. Did Agent A beat Agent B on this problem? It's a pure measure of which agent is stronger relative to the others.
And when they reran the analysis with these better metrics, the findings held up.
They didn't just hold up, they got stronger. With the average normalized score, that correlation jumped from 0.57 all the way to 0.72.
So no matter how you slice it, more diversity equals better performance.
Right. But this is where the real aha moment comes in. The deepest insight came from looking at that valid submission rate. Remember, that's just, did it work at all?
And what happened to it in the low diversity group?
It dropped from almost 98% down to about 92%. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but what it means is that on some tasks, the low diversity agents failed completely. They produced 0 working submissions. They just ran into a wall and gave up.
And why? What was the failure mode?
They got stuck. The paper gives a great example with some text normalization tasks. The low diversity agents got fixated on one very complex model, T5.
A great model, but hard to implement correctly.
Exactly. They kept trying to implement T5, they kept failing, usually due to timeouts, and they just never tried anything else. So, total task failure.
Meanwhile, the high diversity agent.
The high diversity agent probably also tried T5 and failed. But because it had 4 other different ideas in its back pocket, it could just pivot. It would say, okay, T5 is a no-go, let's try this simpler rule-based method instead. And that would work. It would get a valid submission, get on the scoreboard, and ultimately get a better score.
So this is the whole thing. Ideation diversity isn't about finding the one genius solution. It's an insurance policy against the agent's own implementation failures.
That is the fundamental insight of this paper. Diversity is how the agent hedges against its own current limitations in coding and execution. It's a profoundly practical strategy.
Which really shifts the conversation, doesn't it? It's not just about how good the agent is at coding, but how good it is at strategic planning.
Right, and they talk about how this bottleneck is going to shift over time. Today, implementation quality is still a huge factor. The paper shows performance goes up when agents spend more time on code that actually works. No surprise there.
But we all assume that these LLM backbones are going to get much, much better at coding and fast.
And as that happens, the implementation bottleneck it melts away. It becomes less and less important.
So what becomes the new bottleneck?
The ideation and planning phase becomes everything. The key challenge won't be, can my agent code this? It'll be, out of the infinite number of things my agent could try, what is the smartest, most diverse portfolio of initial experiments to run?
It shifts from a test of engineering skill to a test of scientific creativity. Now, of course, the paper acknowledges its limitations. It's all on MLE-bench, and fiddling with prompts can have weird side effects.
Yeah, they mentioned they tried controlling diversity just by changing the LLM's temperature setting, and the results were kind of messy, which suggests that intervening at the prompt level, at the strategic level, was the right way to isolate this effect.
So to wrap this all up, this massive study basically proves that ideation diversity is a key controllable variable for AI agent performance today. The main reason it works is that it's a workaround for the current imperfect implementation skills.
Exactly. And the really cool thought is, what happens next? Since we know coding ability is getting better, the next frontier isn't just a smarter LLM. It's about designing scaffolds with diversity-aware methods baked right into their core logic.
So the provocative thought for you to take away is this. As execution becomes a solved problem, and these agents start tackling truly novel scientific challenges, how are you going to design your agent's planning loop? How will you make sure it's built to maximize discovery and avoid the kind of self-imposed tunnel vision that we saw cripple these agents here? That's the next great design challenge.